Chapter 7 The Reluctant Saint. She awoke while they were still in the air. She checked her watch and did the calculation to know they had about 2 hours left. She stretched her arms in front of her and noticed John look over to her. When their eyes met, he smiled innocuously and said, "You're awake." Bethany smiled and nodded. As he went back to his reading, she noticed that John was still not using his overhead light, and she felt a little guilty for her sharp reply that ended the conversation earlier. "I'm sorry," she said, "for being so short before." "Don't worry, you were tired, so I can forgive," he said. "No harm." "That's nice of you," she said, trying to spark back the conversation. "I've just had a rough couple of months." It seemed like the conversation was extinguished until John closed the magazine and turned towards her. "Can I ask what happened?" "It's just," Bethany sighed. "I lost my dad a little while ago." "Oh, I'm sorry," John said with utter sincerity. "That's a hard time." "It's all right. I've come to terms with it and keep going, but..." And she wondered why she was bringing this up to a total stranger. "It's just, well, now that I've gotten through it and back to work, I wonder what effect my actions have on the world." "I don't understand," he prodded. "I mean, for all that I do in my life, what good does it do to shape the world? When I leave life, what will I have really done that made a difference?" "It seems like you've started to thinking about your own mortality," he said, "and that's fine." "It's more than that, though," she said. "I'm not worried about when I die. I'm worried about how I'm spending my life." She looked squarely at John. "I mean, am I really doing what I should be doing to enjoy my time alive?" John looked thoughtfully for a moment. "Have you ever heard the story of the reluctant saint?" he asked, and her inquisitive expression told him that she hadn't. "You see, there was this guy who learned how to live well. He learned how to conduct himself in life so that he would not sin, have no gregarious pleasure at the expense of others. In essence, he figured out how to live so that he would go to heaven when he died. But after living in that manner for some time, he began to notice the actions of the people around him, the people he loved and cared about. They didn't live the way he did. They lived in such a way that they did not do good things, and he could clearly see that they were bound for hell. So in a moment of reflection, he asked why he should go about living good if eventually he would be in heaven without his loved ones. Why should he bother being good? And his answer resonated from beyond. He was told that it was not for him to decide the fate of others, and that if he really loved them, then he would do what he could to save them. He must live the way he knew he should, and hope that he would teach them by example, teach them and others to live right, but he could not force them to follow his example. And so he lived as a saint, pained in knowing that he could not make his loved ones take a path to heaven. John looked ahead. "Hence the reluctant saint," Bethany said. John looked at her. "Yeah, that's a story my aunt used to tell me when I was younger. I don't know if she came up with it, but I always thought it had a good point to it." "What? That being a saint means being alone?" "No," he corrected. "The point is, if you can do good and live right, then you must. Even if it seems painful at times, because if you have the strength to live right, you are to live that way, to give others who are not as strong the chance to learn from your example." Sounds like a thankless life, she said. Maybe, he replied, but it's the kind of life that makes for a happy death. Do you really believe that? She asked. That if we live right, we go to heaven? Believe it? He said. I'm not even certain if there is anything after life, up or down. The way I see it, all we can do is conduct ourselves in such a way that we have a comfortable and happy passage from life, a happy death. That's what I can believe in. So, what would be the formula for a happy death? Well, I'm no saint, so I can't say for certain, and anything I say may not be suitable for everyone, but I figure if a person exudes love for the world during life, then that person's final moments would be easy, he said thoughtfully. What if a person didn't exude love for the world while living? And who's to judge how much love for the world is enough? Her questions were challenges more than curiosity. I would hope there is some overseeing power to regulate it all, to judge it. But a person who doesn't exude love for the world, meriting a peaceful passing, would have difficult final moments, or go to hell, or be reincarnated, he guessed. What do you think about reincarnation? She asked. I think it could be possible, but in a more tangible way than the religions convey, he said. How so? She pressed. Reincarnation may have to do with subtle traits and patterns of thought or emotions being passed from generation to generation. And who's to say what is transmitted along with them? Perhaps fragment of memory from people who had those similar patterns of thought, a partial or segmental reincarnation, blended together within fragments of other people and their patterns of thoughts or emotions, synthesized into a form of soul unlike any before, uniquely existing in the expanse of time. He smiled, mostly to himself. Wow, she whispered. Is that what you believe? Not particularly, he said, looking back to her. Oh, she said, surprised, because you explain it very eloquently. Because I've spent time thinking about it, he replied, mulling it over just in case a conversation like this one were ever to come about. Do you think people who believe in reincarnation could describe it like that? She said. Whether they try to explain it or have the capacity to accurately know it, if they believe it, then they accept it on a level that allows them to actively function in life. He turned towards her as he spoke, and that acceptance becomes a foundation of their belief as to how they and the world would function in tandem. He took a deep breath. The powerful aspect of belief is that it remains with us when sensation, cognition, language, and life functions fail us. It may be belief that we carry with us during the final moments of our life, and that is why great care needs to be taken in crafting what we believe. He looked past her, out the window. If ideas are the sketch, and thoughts are the paintings, and words the architecture, belief would be sculpture. He looked back to her and smiled. Is that what you believe? She asked with a smile. He yawned. I believe right now that I may need to follow your example and get some sleep, if you don't mind. Bethany shook her head to signify she would not mind. You can have my magazine if you'd like something to read, he said, offering her the glossy publication. She accepted the magazine and wondered if she should avoid turning on the light as to not disturb his sleep the way similar to how he had done for her. She watched him as he took a sleep mask from his jacket pocket and used it to cover his eyes. He settled into his seat to sleep, and she flipped through the magazine.